Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar or video in which we're going to try and look at ways of how we can move through this maelstrom that we've found ourselves in the last few months. I'm delighted this afternoon to be joined by Toni Colton, who is from Chaplaincy Central and will introduce herself a little bit more and tell you about her experience as chaplain and working to support chaplains. But I'm also possibly, Toni, I'm really sorry about this, but possibly even more delighted to be joined by Kay Brown and 5 pupils in different years from Abbey Grange Church of England Academy in Leeds, who are here to take part in our webinar and our video recording this afternoon. So welcome to everybody and thank you so much for your time to come and join us. So I'm Maggie Everett. I am the Lead Development Officer for the Centre for Chaplaincy and Education. And over the last 5 weeks, as I have been listening to chaplains and to leaders of organisations and denominations working with chaplains, we have come to the conclusion that there is a way forward really for us to help you, or to try to. And this video is really the result of conversations with Free Churches Group, with the Methodist Church, with various organisations, including Chaplaincy Central and Saltley Trust, Church of England, all sorts of different people who are really concerned that we can actually support you as chaplains at this time. And the first thing that I think we're going to be considering this afternoon that has been fascinating to listen to across the media and to be engaged in discussions about is this whole idea of how can we actually frame the time in which we are living. And there are so many metaphors that are being used to I suppose, describe and try and make sense of what we're experiencing. That's part of what we want to start with. So Toni, would you like to tell us what your experience is in chaplaincy and introduce yourself? And then, can you tell us a bit about some of the examples and metaphors that you've come across, please?
Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be with you. And as Maggie has said, I work with Chaplaincy Central. I'm the Chair of Trustees. And I myself, way back in the day, was a chaplain in a local further education college. But since then, it's been my joy to be supporting chaplains in all that they do. When we started to put together the idea for these videos, we started to think about the way people speak about this time that we're in. And you will notice that this one's called Managing the Maelstrom. Storm is a very big metaphor for this period of time, but the one that came up first was war. This is a war we're in, and that's not surprising because this metaphor has been used for these sort of events since 1676, so it's got a lot of history going with it. There are a lot of people who are very concerned about using the idea of this being a war. I want to focus on one group who are our frontline workers in the medical profession, because they most of all have been saying, please don't use this as a metaphor. It's because they feel that they never enlisted to fight a battle. They're doing their job, which is to treat those who are sick and ill. They haven't been called up. They haven't been trained. And many of them are really struggling because of the extreme situations in which they find themselves. But above all, they have never really thought about this idea of sacrificing themselves for the needs of the country. And this has caused quite a lot of them to have a great deal of anxiety and guilt, especially if they are not the ones who are on intensive care, but they're doing other things. So they're saying, please don't use this as a metaphor for this event. And I think we need to hear them loud and clear. The storm or maelstrom is gathering pace, as it were. That goes with the metaphor, doesn't it? And is very popular in the United States. It also goes with terms like a perfect storm, which means it's really on the ball, this storm, a tsunami, which is overwhelming, and a blizzard in which you can't see your way through. I notice that care home workers are particularly using the tsunami metaphor because they feel so overwhelmed. And who can blame them really for calling on this to picture how they feel. But scientists are saying, beware of using this, because this actually has some dangers of its own. You see, where we are is not an unusual event. We've had these sort of events before. This one's bigger, perhaps, than most, but we're actually in a zoonamic disease time. And did you know that 65% of all diseases in the world come under this category? And it means that something from the animal kingdom has passed to the human, to human beings. So you can think of other ones very quickly. Malaria comes from animals to human beings, anthrax from cows to us, and some of these other big ones like SARS and Ebola have also zoonotic diseases. And scientists are saying we need to see these all as one big thing, because you know what? They're saying they're largely driven by human beings and not a natural disaster as such. We need to have a picture of what we're in, so that when we are studying it and coming out the other side, we actually take the right measures. And the right measures will be environmental and social and cultural, as well as medical and scientific. So I think we've got to be careful. I've heard other metaphors. This is an unwelcome visitor. Fortunately, we can't show it the door all that easy. There's a domino effect, and we've seen that from one to the other. It's a bullet train charging through society. And from the United States, it's a tricky individual. But really, I think we need to go with the World Health Authority. This is my personal opinion, who says this is a pandemic. And that's exactly what it is. Pan, meaning that it's right across the world, and demic mean that it's a disease. That's different to epidemic, which is a local disease. This is not an epidemic that affects just Britain, but it's a pandemic, and that's what we're in. So that's what I'm going to be calling it, if that's okay. But I understand that other people like picture language, and that's fine by me.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? That's really interesting and really helpful, Toni. Thank you ever so much for that. I hadn't understood the range and the significant number of diseases that actually have originated with animals. I think it's also interesting, isn't it? Because I think when we talk about, as Christians, we talk about our faith, we often realise that language in talking about faith is really limiting. And I think that's possibly one of the reasons why we try to use picture language to help people understand the experiences that we have. I mean, I remember in my teaching RE days and teaching at A-level, talking about this whole idea of a religious experience, that actually, if you try and look at the qualities of the characteristics of a religious experience, one of the key ones is that it is ineffable, that you can't really describe it. And I think there's some measure of connection with that, trying to describe what we're experiencing at the minute, that there is that kind of ineffability. And I've always loved partly the Buddhist way of talking about it. It is neither this and it's neither that. Well, that's the via negativa, the old early Christian way of talking about things, but also the Buddhist way of approaching it. It's neti. It's not this and it's not that, so that you actually kind of get the image of what it is from by saying what it is not. And I think there's an element of that we can utilise in this context as well. So thanks for that. That's really, really interesting. And I wonder whether too that maybe there are lessons to be learned from other chaplains who, through recent history or through history, have actually been in extreme situations. Because I think that's one thing we do agree, is that this situation is extreme. It's certainly, I'm not young, as our visitors, our guests and people that have joined us as young as them, and this is completely beyond my experience. And I'm listening to my dad, who at nearly 96 was very much active in the Second World War. It's still not similar to what he experienced, although I think he's drawing on some of his experiences. Are there lessons we can learn, Toni? Because I know you've been doing some research into this, from other people and other chaplains, that we can actually take and maybe apply to ourselves today.
Well, I did look around lots of things that have been written by chaplains, and the one that really jumped out at me was a book called Captains of the Soul, which was about the experiences of Australian chaplains in the Japanese prisoner of war camps. And I thought that there was a lot that they reflected on during and after their experience that could help us. The first thing was that the day they were captured, everything changed. And I think we can say that really the day lockdown began, everything changed. But the thing that they wanted to share with people was that though circumstances had changed, they hadn't changed. They were still the people that God had called them to be and made them to be, and they were still chaplains. That hadn't changed. They still had the responsibilities, because they were taken lock, stock and barrel with the soldiers into the camps, and so they considered themselves still to be chaplains. We have been taken, all of us, into lockdown, and we are still ourselves. We haven't changed. Circumstances all around us may change, but we haven't changed. And that reminded me very much of the fact that that's because God never changes, whatever the circumstances, yesterday, today, and forever. He's the same. We're made in his image. We don't change, even though the circumstances do. Now, we will change as we go through because we mature and grow. There's no doubt about that. But Toni Colton is still Toni Colton, and she's still the woman that God made her to be.
Yeah, that's a really important point, isn't it? That we haven't changed and our calling hasn't changed, but that actually we are going to change, because each day we face different opportunities that give us those opportunities to grow and to develop, don't they? That's really interesting. Are there any practical things that they may have come up with that we can actually use and use to get some ideas and some hints on how we could actually appropriate those for today?
Well, the first thing that they said was that they saw themselves as in the role of sustaining people through all that they were going through. And they had various categories that they looked at. So they highlighted the follow, that there's the category of morale and discipline. And I think we can think about that as chaplains. Routine and structure that everybody has to go through. Keeping our humanity, because although we're locked behind doors, we're human beings and we need to keep our humanity. Bringing comfort to those around. And above all and beyond all, in all of this, maintaining a transcendent hope and offering that to those that they met. So those were the key things. And I think there are lots of things that we can do in this area. I know that our guests, our young people, have kept their Christian union going throughout this time. And this is a great time of sustaining one another, encouraging one another, and keeping some of those old disciplines going of meeting together, which is really important. And perhaps just the encouragement, and that the chaplains reflected that wasn't just with the people that they are generally meeting with, but also they had a responsibility to those outside of the situation as well, because we're still who we are wherever we are. I think that they saw it very important to provide opportunities for worship, because that's often very difficult in radically changed situations. And for some of the people that we meet in our schools and colleges, they will belong to a church. And so I know there's loads of wonderful online services and all these things going on. But there'll be other people who don't have that. And so chaplains can be very important in keeping those opportunities going for others and helping students help their friends who perhaps don't belong to a church to keep opportunities from worship going. I know that some are encouraging each other to say the Lord's Prayer at midday every day, knowing that everybody is saying that. Some people are lighting a candle at 8 o'clock in the evening and saying a prayer for key workers. These are joint things that we can all do. And also, because we're at home a lot more, we can have a look online and see what there is, and then have good things to recommend to other people who don't know good from bad, really, when it comes to spiritual things, because they just don't have the skills to be able to do that. And there's all sorts of rubbish out there, but there's all sorts of wonderful things to access as well, aren't there? I love the story of the chaplains in the prisoner of war camps who carried in their pockets little bags of rice and little bottles of boiled raisin juice. They did this because they weren't allowed to meet together to have communion. But by always having the little bottles of rice and the little bottles of raisin juice, the little bags of rice, they could share symbols of the Lord's body and blood wherever they went. And we can't meet together and do things, but there are things that we can do for one another that remind us of Jesus, aren't there? And we can do those all the time. Finally, I think it's important that we keep the prayer life going ourselves. So chaplains, this is a call to prayer. And you know what? There's so much prayer that we need to do. We need to have a separate list, I think, almost. I've heard of chaplains who, when they hear of something, make sure they always write back to those who are asking for prayer, which I think is a brilliant idea. Just assuring people that we're praying for them, telling them that we're doing that. You know, we're called by Jesus to be a very big theological word for our visitors, but incarnational. That means living amongst people and with them through everything. And the chaplains who were in the prison of war camps said their biggest gift was to be there with them, because then they could walk with them through everything. And that was a privilege and a gift of God. How amazing to actually think being in a prison of war camp and suffering all that could be seen as a gift from God. It's I'm not sure I could do that, but I do think it's a gift of God that we're all in this together. So maybe we're getting there, we're learning something from everybody.
Yeah, I think that's really true, isn't it? That we are all in this together. I think one of the things that's really important to say, however, is that we're not all in the same boat.
No.
That, you know, we talk with that's something that's beginning to gradually emerge. You know, a lot of people have been talking in the media, we're all in the same boat. Well, actually, we're not. You know, some chaplains are on their own physically in the house. There is nobody else around them. They are really beginning to wonder, you know, about their own sanity at times. And I genuinely mean that, because of mental health issues that impact all of us. And yet there are others of us who are in households where, you know, we have the roof over our heads, we have comfortable home, etc., etc. So it is really quite important. But I think, thank you, Toni, so much for all of those insights, which I hope people can take some encouragement from and some hope from, that actually those chaplains not only survived, but actually lived to tell the tale and to bring hope to those of us that are facing the pandemic that we're facing at the moment. You know, it is true, isn't it, that we can lay down our calling. God may ask us to lay it down, but actually nobody can ever take it from us. So even for those chaplains who, or maybe especially for those chaplains who might be watching this, who have been furloughed by their employers, that actually, you know, God knows your situation and God knows what it is He wants you to learn at this time, which I think for all of us is always a challenge. So I would now really like to hand over to Kay. Kay Brown is the chaplain at the Abbey Grange Church of England Academy, and we are delighted that she has been able to encourage 5 of her pupils to join her. So Kay, I'm going to hand over to you and let you take over this next section. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Abbey Grange is a high school in Leeds. We take students from across the whole city, but we have a Church of England ethos. So I've invited 5 young people to join us this afternoon and to talk about what chaplaincy might be able to offer them and what other young people might want. So I'm going to ask them some questions, but first I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to ask you to unmute, guys, if you can, and I'll go around, and as I ask you to introduce yourself, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what year you're in, and maybe one interesting fact about yourself if you'd like to something that says something about you. So I'm going to go around my screen. So Naomi, could you start for us?
My name's Naomi Birch. I'm in year 8 at Abbey Grange, and an interesting fact about me is that since the pandemic and being in lockdown, I think I've read 16 books.
That's amazing. Brilliant, Naomi.
And next on my screen is Sam. Sam, could you introduce yourself?
So, hello, I'm Sam, and I'm from Abbey Grange in Leeds, and I'm in year 9. And one interesting fact about me is, since the lockdown, I have been trying and failing to do gymnastics, and I very much hurt my shoulder, but it's better now.
Wow, that's amazing. Adam.
Hello everybody, my name's Adam. I'm in year 12 at Abbey Grange Academy. I'll go on follow the trend. Since the lockdown, I've retaught myself how to play the trumpet. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but so I've got around to it now. It's been really good.
Good use of time. Excellent. Charlie.
I'm Charlie. I'm in year 7 at Abbey Grange, and an interesting fact about me is since the lockdown, I've joined Gareth Malone's Great British Home Chorus.
Brilliant. Well done. Michaela.
I'm Michaela. I'm in year 9 at Abbey Grange, and my family's been in lockdown a week longer than everybody else.
But you're all feeling better now?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is one thing that you wish your chaplain could or would do for you at the moment? And you can make this hypothetical, you can make this as big as you like or as little as you like, whatever you would like to say. So I might take this in a slightly different order, and I might start with Michaela this time.
Well, I think it's just a lot of people, like especially only children. Obviously, I don't know, but I'm friends with quite a few, and they're getting kind of lonely, and they're kind of like spiraling into their own thoughts, which some of the time isn't good. So just like more support for mental health, because like we're all gonna come out different, so we need some help to try and change it a bit.
No, that's a really good idea. Thank you. That's helpful. Sam, would you like to say a little something?
Well, maybe kind of like more advice on how to help each other, because I personally aren't really, well, I'm not struggling that much, because I'm getting a lot closer with my family as well, and it's been quite nice. But I know quite a lot of my friends have had to deal with kind of difficult households, and I've been trying to help them, but I'm not really sure how, really.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's great. That's a really good one as well. Charlie, what are your reflections on this?
Well, I'm not really sure if like me and my friends like need anything more, because we're getting all the reflections each day, and that's really helping. But I'm finding that some of us we're like missing our friends more and more as it goes on, because we're not in the routine of seeing them every day like we usually are.
So maybe thinking about how we can help people to maintain friendships and stay connected. Yeah, that's great. Naomi?
So I talked to some of my friends, quite a lot of them. It's been quite a time full of quite a lot of loss, is like friends or family, and just losing people. So I thought something that they'd quite like would be like a prayer line, where if they sent in and asked for prayer, someone would send back with either a prayer or saying that they would pray for them, because quite a lot of my friends, even the ones that come to the Christian Union, they're not actually Christians and they don't go to church. And I know that it can be quite hard to stay I guess, true to yourself during this sort of time if you don't have anyone else to look to. So I look to God because I think that's how I'd get around things like this. But I know my friend lost her granddad, and that she doesn't believe in God, and so it's been really hard. So I think if we had like a prayer line where you could send in and ask, then they might feel more comforted.
That's brilliant, thank you. Adam, I'm coming to you last.
Okay. So I was thinking perhaps trying to set up some sort of cell group on, well, if there are cells already existing, that chaplains can sort of organise a cell group over Zoom and doing stuff like that regularly to keep on checking up on young people, because it's important as part of our Christian faith and our spiritual growth to keep on having that fellowship with each other and that social aspect. And coming back on what Toni said as well, it's about having to worshipping together. So perhaps trying out some of those ideas through Zoom and through applications like this.
Brilliant, thank you. So you obviously are talking to your friends, and that's great, because the second question I'm going to ask you is about what other young people maybe might be thinking as well. And so it's sort of similar to the first question, but what would people want to say to their chaplain at the moment? So maybe something they might want to ask, or maybe there's something that they might want to add to what you've already said. So Naomi, I'm going to start with you again. So what do you think people might want to say to a chaplain at the moment, whether in Abbey Grange or in any other school?
So I think, again, quite a lot of my friends are just asking for prayer. But then in my church, we've been doing church at home. So they've set up videos. But I know quite a lot of people on that are also wondering if there could be like more, I guess, if they could ask people how they should feel about what's going on, and if they should be scared, if they should be happy school's not on, or sad that they're missing everyone. So it's probably just asking for prayer and discussing emotions, because it's really strange at the moment, because personally I don't know whether I should be happy that I've not got school, whether I should be sad or scared, because it's a totally new thing for quite a lot of people.
Yeah, for all of us, absolutely. Yeah. Charlie, what could you add to that? What do you think people would want to say? Oh, we need you to.
Well, it's kind of like, I think kind of what Adam said is good, because like a regular thing to check up on people, like a cell group or something like that, that's regular. Because like at my church, in my church youth group, twice a week we're meeting up, and on Sundays we're doing like a prayer thing, and we're talking about like the Bible and stuff. But then on Thursday nights we're just having like a quiz night, just like to just hang out and have fun and just checking up on people.
So Adam, as a cell group leader, maybe then you could reflect on what do you think about these ideas, and if there's anything else that you'd want to say.
Well, yeah, I think at the moment it's been going really well. So sending out resources every day and keeping in touch with all the students, that's been really good. So I'd like to say thank you for doing that for us. That's been really nice. Thank you. Just sort of, I think organising cell groups, although it might take a bit of doing, and it's trying to contact people who are perhaps out of reach. Like this, I know quite a few of my friends have just completely disappeared in this time. They just sort of kept themselves into themselves. So trying to contact them and get them involved. It's the people who stay quiet that perhaps you need to encourage and to nurture more. So trying to get this like a Zoom thing set up might be a good idea.
Thank you, and I think it's good to highlight the people perhaps who are quiet. How do we contact them? That's a really good point. Michaela. So just to remind you, the question is thinking about what would you or young people want to say?
I think like just some support, like just somebody to talk to for anybody who can't really talk to anybody else. because I know that that might be a struggle for like quite a lot of my friends. They can't really talk to anybody about anything. They kind of just have to survive by themselves and try their hardest, but yeah, it doesn't really work.
Thank you, that's really good. Sam, last but not least.
Well, it's not really a request or anything, but it's thank you, like Adam, for all the like collective worship resources you've been putting on Milk and things like that. Because I've been reading them before I start period 1 every day, and they're really useful. And they partly just get me reading the Bible more because I need to do that. But yeah, they're really useful. Thanks.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for that encouragement for me as well, and also lots for me to go away and think about. I'm going to hand back to Maggie now to pull all that together.
Thank you, Kay, and thank you so much to Naomi, Sam, Adam, Charlie, Michaela. I have written down all the things that you said because I think some of them are really inspirational. They're all inspirational. But I've got coffee and cake with some chaplains later, and I would like to share some of those ideas, as well as obviously they'll come out on the video, because they're really powerful, and hearing it from you has really meant a lot to me. And I don't think I'm alone with that. I think Toni and I both, and Kay, are all on the same page. That really, really powerful. And hopefully at some point over the next months, however long that is, when we're out of lockdown, I would love to come and visit you and actually meet you face to face, apart from just seeing you at the other end of a camera. So I hope that Kay, I might be able to come and gate crash your school at some point in the future. So thank you very much indeed to all of you, to Kay, to Toni, to all of our young people for joining me today. I'm still going back to Jesus, good place to end as well as to start, isn't it? The beginning and the end. And a reminder that when Jesus was with the disciples on Lake Galilee and was in the boat and in a storm, Jesus just said, "Peace, be still." And it was. God bless you.